John Noe unveils Greater Than We Believe with your host, Stephen King.
Welcome back. It's good to see you again. Thank you for joining us again. My name is Stephen King, and this is my friend John Noe. We are putting on a teaching series called Greater Than We Believe. We're hoping that you are a returning subscriber. We're in the middle right now of a subject under the heading of Greater Than We Believe, which is referring to Jesus. We're on a subset heading called Kingdom Christianity. And this Kingdom Christianity is a subject we're going to be talking about for quite a while. We'll be having many videos under that as a subset of its own. Now, we had spoken a couple videos ago. We were quoting another author in one of his books, and he made the claim that the kingdom, or the teaching of the kingdom, had been tamed. And so our last video was the beginning of a three-part series asking the question, has Christianity been tamed? So John just finished video number 47. This is 48, and we're going to be basically continuing that discussion about whether or not Christianity has been tamed. So John, thank you for inviting us back, and let's see where we can go from here.
Yeah, actually what Wolf said was Christianity was tamed, not the kingdom.
No, you're right. Okay.
But the losing,
right,
the expulsion of the kingdom from the gospel and from Christianity per se is why it's been tamed.
Right.
You know, so we just keep people saved and we sit around and wait for going to heaven.
Okay.
Kind of thing. All right. So we've looked at last video. We've looked at three alterations that have been made by Christians, by our own leadership to our own faith, that have resulted in this taming process that Alan Wolf is talking about in his book that we've been mentioning. The first one was we've forsaken the central teaching of Jesus. The second one we addressed was it's been written out of biblical worldviews. And the third one is gospel reductionism. The kingdom has been expelled out of that. And now we want to get into the fourth alteration that I am calling abandonment theology.
Okay.
And the Great Retreat.
Okay.
So, from a historical standpoint, over the last, say, 75 years or so, Stephen, we Christians in America have given away almost everything our forefathers in the faith came to this country to found.
That's sad.
The institutions, the government, the schools, the universities, the role as a moral influencer of society, and branches of the government, and so forth. And remarkably, we didn't get pushed out by a superior force or more powerful enemy who had greater and better beliefs than we had. We simply withdrew and into the vacuum swept the ungodly crowd and took over all these institutions.
Yes.
Consequently, we Americans are paying a huge and dreadful price for our own self-inflicted abandonment and retreat. So, how do we account for our major indifference and shameful withdrawal? Well, we account for it with one word: eschatology. The study of last things.
Right.
And as you and I have talked, one's view of the future determines one's philosophy of life.
Correct.
So, the historical fact is that during this time period, the dominant eschatology, or end-time view, or worldview, in conservative Christian circles changed from one of historical optimism and advancing and furthering the expansion of the kingdom of God to one of historical pessimism, and that the kingdom of God was no longer here anymore anyway. Well, ideas have consequences, don't they?
Yes, they do.
So during the mid-20th century, the optimistic post-millennial worldview of the founders of America was displaced as the majority report among evangelicals by the pessimistic dispensational premillennial view that got its authentication, so to speak, or legitimacy in 1948 with the establishment of Israel as a nation and that whole thing. And this latter and relatively new end-time view in church history, actually it originated in about the 1830s with a guy by the name of John Nelson Darby, argues that the world, our world, is supposed to get worse and worse before Christ returns. And statistically, the ascendancy of that worldview into dominance perfectly coincides and correlates with the withdrawal of Christians from social involvement or the public square and the rise of godless rule throughout our institutions in this country and the rapid decline of morality and public life here in America, sad to say. My friend, John Chalfront, who I know, an active Christian, who wrote this book, America's Call to Greatness, which was formerly titled, and I liked his first. See which title you like better. This was his second title.
Okay.
His first title was Abandonment Theology.
I like that.
I do too. I always like that better.
Excuse me.
Abandonment Theology. Well, here's what he said. In fact, why don't you read it? Can you read it?
Sure.
You done coughing? Turn to page 142. I think I got a mark there in yellow. If you would. Yeah, there you go.
Okay. You ready?
Yep.
Much of the clergy, along with their millions of victimized American Christians, following their pastor's lead, have retreated from the battlefront to the social, non-confrontational, non-controversial reservation. They say that Christians should...
Of their church.
Of their church, right. They say that Christians should confine their religious activities to politically non-controversial roles and keep their Bibles out of the political process.
And we have dutifully obeyed.
That's not good.
Not good. Chalfont further points out that dispensational's emphasis on these are the last days as being the number one reason why many modern-day Christians, in stark contrast to our predecessors in the faith, now believe that, as he says in here, the next page, as a matter of fact, any efforts we make to restore righteousness to this nation will be in vain and need not be undertaken. Ideas have consequences. Others credit Israel, along with Israel's rebirth as a nation in 1948. These two books.
Yeah.
Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth.
That's problematic.
And the Left Behind series and all the books that came along with that, along with the Left Behind movie that came out back in the 1970s. No, that was Planet Earth in the 1970s. These were in the 90s, I believe. As two major factors that have changed American Christianity more than anything else during this time period. Subtly and surely, the societal focus switched from one of advancing and expanding the kingdom to a pattern of escapism and paralysis that much of the church has resulted in, and has consequently produced a great retreat from social involvement to a major extent, except for minor little things that we do to make us feel good. But we have essentially lost much of the ground to the secular humanist forces. Another classic example of this withdrawal phenomena, Stephen, is the much revered evangelist Billy Graham, once again, in a 2004 article in his Decision magazine, which is the magazine of the Graham ministry. He preached that, quote, "We are headed toward a catastrophe. We can't go on much longer morally. We can't go on much longer scientifically. The technology that was supposed to save us is ready to destroy us." End quote. He further reported the doomsday clock, the one that's kept by the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, he says, at this writing, and this was 2004, stands at 7 minutes to midnight. 2 minutes closer to the potential destruction that the clock read in 1998, and 7 minutes closer than it did in 1995. Popular Left Behind co-authors Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye agree with Graham. In their book, Are We Living in the End Times, that 1999 book, they cited 20 reasons for believing that the rapture and the tribulation would occur during our generation. And that was 99. We're 20 years beyond that. They only got another, 20 more years to go before they've been proven wrong once again. And they will be proven wrong. But like Graham, and to emphasize their sense of urgency, they claim that our generation, here and now, is the first generation that has the technology and the opportunity to uniquely fulfill many of the prophecies of Revelation and completely destroy this planet. Solemn words. John MacArthur, another prominent dispensational author and a pastor, takes this gloom and doom specter, Stephen, a step further. He's trying to convince Christians that reclaiming the culture is pointless. A futile exercise. He says, I'm convinced we are living in a post-Christian society, a civilization that exists under God's judgment. Read that in his book, The Vanishing Conscious, 1994 book. And from a gospel reductionist position, he also argues that people becoming saved, that is our only agenda. And it's the only thing that we're in the world to do. Astonishingly, fellow dispensationalists Tim LaHaye and David Noble of the Worldview book that I cited think MacArthur is off base. And he's one of their guys. You know something? In their co-authored book, Mind Seeds, they concede that there is plenty to do in all spheres of life, and the importance of Christians entering the cultural sphere cannot be overlooked or underestimated. And Christian parents need to prepare their sons and daughters to invade the fortress of the left. Good luck.
Yeah, really.
Not surprisingly, in a May 2015 issue of Charisma Magazine reported that a recent Barna poll found that 4 in 10 Americans and 77% of evangelicals believe that the world that we're living in right now is in the biblical end times. This is because of Troy Anderson writes in an article in Charisma Magazine 2015, this is because of a seemingly non-stop series of crises in recent years, starting with 9/11 in 2001. Those terrorist attacks and other catastrophic natural disasters and ballooning levels of debt and the growing fears of World War III, etc., etc., etc. Hence, many, Troy Anderson writes, many are asking whether the world is now in the run-up to the end-time events predicted in Scripture. End quote, end quote. Well, thankfully, Stephen, there are voices of sanity that are speaking out against all this stuff.
Yes.
Not just you and me. One of them is Gary DeMar, a post-millennialist, and he is highly critical of dispensationalist calls for social activism because he writes in an article in Biblical Worldview Magazine, his magazine in 2003, he says, unfortunately, while LaHaye's points are well made, his call for any type of social action cannot be sustained over time because of his eschatology. DeMar further claims that LaHaye's short-term and popular eschatological views faces a logical dilemma. And that dilemma is on the relationship between Bible prophecy and Christian activism. And he relents. DeMar does that. I would rather have LaHaye's prophetic, as he calls it, prophetic schizophrenia than MacArthur's prophetic fatalism. DeMar also cites Jan Markle, president of Olive Tree Ministries, who believes and preaches that, quote, Satan has control of this world until Christ returns and vanquishes him, end quote. And consequently, quote, the church is not in the business of taking anything away from Satan, but the souls of men, end quote. Now, he chastises Markle as, quote, a perfect example of someone whose unbiblical end-time views are dangerous, a believer in an end-time scenario that demands a return of Christ to rescue us. And until this happens, don't look look for, or don't do, or don't expect anything to be successful at any type of long-term societal transformation. In fact, to participate in this type of work, according to Markle, is delusional and will keep people out of heaven. Likewise, Stephen Strang, founder and publisher of Charisma Magazine, who also believes that same way, agrees that the Jesus is coming mentality has kept many Bible believers from engaging in more cultural or political process, and that the emphasis should always be on the heavenly kingdom rather than an earthly one. Isn't that a sad commentary?
Yes.
So make no mistake, Stephen. End times and these end time ideas have consequences, and many Christians have been hoodwinked by this recent, and I want to emphasize recent eschatological shift in views. Most certainly, the gloom and doom end time views affect how we think, how we live, what we do, what we don't do, and our view of the future determines our philosophy of life and all that. It shows up in our character. It shows up in our level of Bible knowledge or lack of Bible knowledge. It shows up in our struggles to survive or thrive, and in our engagement or disengagement from society. But as we shall see later on in this video series, there is a strong societal involvement dimension and restoration imperative to both the full gospel and the kingdom that we had ignored, denied, and expelled from most of our Christian teaching. Sad to say. Well, so what's resulted in is massive indifference and ineffectiveness. So today, the internal dumbing down of our faith, that we Christians have been led astray and dumbed down, thrown off target, has not only produced masses of Christians who are indistinguishable from unbelievers, as we've quoted in some of our previous videos, in terms of thoughts, words, and deeds, they are also largely indifferent about being indistinguishable.
Yes.
They don't care that we're indistinguishable. But Jesus called all Christians to be salt and light in the world, did he not?
Yes, he did.
Are any Christians excluded from that?
None.
He also warned us not to lose our saltiness or darken our light, did he not?
No. Yes, he did.
No.
Did he not?
Oh, just threw me off. He further explained that every good tree bears
good fruit.
Good fruit, and every bad tree,
bad fruit.
What do you think we're talking about here?
Well, we're putting out bad fruit. The Christianity of today is we're working on trying to switch that around to a good fruit.
And he said, by what you will recognize them?
By the love they have among themselves.
And by their fruit.
By their fruit, yes.
All right. This means that being weak, anemic, and casual about our faith, as well as apathetic and ineffective and impotent in being salt and light in the world, results in Christians becoming no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. Those aren't my words. Those are Jesus' words. Matthew 5:13. No, he did not explain what he meant by that. But it could not be good.
No.
It could not be good at all. Okay. And of course, the famous quote by Edmund Burke, an 18th century British statesman, who once warned that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is what? You know?
For good men to do nothing?
That's right. You got it. Exactly. For good men to do nothing. And Willard, let's see, do I have that here? Dallas Willard. Oh, here it is. Here, I want you to read it. Turn to page 343. Dallas Willard points out in one of the psychological and behavioral implications of this most popular end-time view. Page 343, marked there.
And if we think we are facing an irresistible cosmic force of evil, it will invariably lead to giving in and giving up, usually with very little resistance. If you can convince yourself that you are helpless, you can then stop struggling and just let it happen.
Wouldn't that be nice?
That will seem a great relief for a while. You can once more be a normal human being, but then you will have to deal with the consequences. And for normal human beings, those are very severe.
For this reason, Stephen, the dominant worldview in American evangelicalism today is, drumroll, fatalism.
Yes, fatalism.
The world will and is supposed to get worse and worse. It produces a why fight. We're on the next flight.
Yes.
Indifference and a withdrawal, retreat mentality. A fiddling while Rome burns behavioral reality. Turn to Isaiah 9:6-7 for me, if you would please. So how does this fatalistic worldview match up with the then future messianic kingdom prophecy of what Jesus would bring to planet Earth? Isaiah 9:6-7.
6-7 says, to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government. Of the increase of his government and peace, there will be no end.
How can you have an increase with no end and have God withdraw the kingdom?
That makes sense.
Which is a popular view.
Yeah.
Doesn't match up at all, does it?
No, it's continual.
Not at all. And yet that's what we've done. And it's the dominant view. So, Chalfont, in an article in Whistleblower Magazine 2005, is quoted as saying, "This faulty religious teaching is the only way to explain why so many well-meaning Christians are paralyzed into inaction. And he concedes okay, I'll go ahead and read this. He concedes in his book, this one, where I got it, Abandonment Theology, says it comprises what is left today of the militant, power-filled, full-dimensional Christian faith of America's founders after decades of erosion. Watered down and trivializing of God's action mandates by America's abandonment clergy, based on the prophecy that these are the last days, and any efforts we make to restore righteousness to this nation will be in vain and need not be. Bad commentary, don't you think?
Very.
He further explains in a whistleblower article, that same whistleblower article I mentioned before, says, for this type of Christianity, there is no need to stand up to evil because they're saved by grace, not by works. Despite repeated biblical admonition that faith without works is dead. And there's no need to obey God's commands because they're already saved, so why bother? No need to try to help make it a better world because they're going to be raptured soon. And those who remain behind can sort out the mess. Is it any wonder the church and in America are in? Similarly, is it any wonder why the moral majority failed after only 20 years in existence? Time magazine reported, at its peak, the moral majority had 6.5 million members, but that didn't always lead to action. Founder Jerry Falwell summarized the failure and demise of this activistic organization in this fatalistic manner. And I'm going to ask you, if you would read Jerry Falwell's explanation of the failure of the moral majority from page 276. I think I got it marked there for you. 276.
Okay. These two sections?
Yes. What I got marked in yellow. What I got it marked in yellow.
Yeah, here's 76. 24.
276. That should be it right there.
Okay. It says 278.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Where's 276?
That's what I was wondering. That says 5. There's 4.
Well, that's strange. Let me see that a minute.
That's what you want. Okay.
That was my fault.
Just the first one or both halves?
Both halves.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 278.
Yeah.
My error.
But between now and then, I see things getting worse and worse and worse. All we've ever been able to do is to have the church put its thumb in the dike.
Watch.
That doesn't help much. But it's inevitable that it's going to come out. We're supposed to keep it plugged up as long as we can, be a restraining influence. We prevent spoilage. This is still the most decent place on earth to live, and it's because of the church. But we're kidding ourselves if we think there's any program, any third party, or either of the two main parties or anything we can do to straighten things out right now. Because when you have a society that will support Jerry Springer and give him top TV ratings, then you have a porn industry, and when you have a porn industry of $8 billion a year in the U.S., I'm talking about the hard, dirty stuff and the kiddie porn. These things that we have in the country are beyond repair.
Words of Jerry Falwell before he passed away about the demise of why the moral majority only lasted for 20 years. Isn't that a sad statement on how your view of the future determines your philosophy of life?
Yes.
The problem for the moral majority, Stephen, was both foundational and systemic. And that problem was, in the words of 1 Corinthians 14:8, King James Version, it was sounding an uncertain sound.
Yes.
1 Corinthians 14:8 says, "For if the trumpet give an uncertain sound," and trumpets were used to send messages back in those days, "who shall prepare himself to do the battle?" That's what was going on here. And we're speaking about all this stuff is getting better to come down. We're living in the end times. It's all about to happen. It's going to happen now. And then they're trying to get people to go out and do stuff. Doesn't work. That's prophetic schizophrenia.
Yes.
Or whatever you want to call it. The leadership and membership of the moral majority was comprised of those kind of people. Mostly fundamentalists that were also dispensational premillennialists. Therefore, this organization simply did not have a certain sound or a solid enough theological foundation to support the level of activism to which it aspired.
Yes.
It was like the mythical little bird with one wing shorter than the other.
Flying circles.
That would just fly around in concentrically decreasing circles until it finally collides with itself and self-destructs. That's what happens.
Okay.
And that's what happens with that. That's why end-time views are so important.
Yes.
Because those views of the future determine your philosophy of life. And that's exactly what caused the demise of the moral majority and many others. After all, polished brass on a sinking ship.
Yes.
Why bother to fix up or improve a broken world that is about to be thrown on the ash heap of history by God himself?
Yes.
Why bother to fix up and improve a broken world that is about to be turned into a piece of charcoal by God himself? It's the classic cultural downer.
Yes.
Subscribed to by many, if not most, Christians who have given up without a fight while awaiting Jesus' return to take them on a flight through outer space to heaven without dying. The rapture. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Why? Because Jesus prayed against it.
Yes.
Turn to John 17.
Yes.
I'm not making this stuff up, Stephen. Jesus prayed against it. John 17. I should have given you a warning. John 17, verse 15 and verse 20.
Verse 15 and 20.
Jesus' prayer for all believers. Okay, here we go.
My prayer is not that you take them out of the world,
Whoa!
but that you protect them from the evil one.
Well, Jesus was just praying for his disciples at that time, right? And then go down here to
verse 20.
And then go to verse 20.
My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. That's you and me.
That's right. And that's you all out there listening to this video too. Jesus' prayer for all believers.
Yes.
For them back then, us today, and in between, and in the future, is not that we be taken out of the world. What does the rapture teach?
Wow. It's escapism at its worst.
Given, Stephen, this theology, this eschatology, this worldview, it makes absolutely no sense to labor for the betterment of society or to try to overturn anything evil or try to righting injustices, because all that will do will be delay the inevitable.
Well, that's what they say. I don't agree with that, but
after all, things are supposed to get worse and worse until the end. Douglas Frank, I'll let you read that.
Okay.
Page 97, and then I'll send you to another one. Published in his book, Less Than Conquerors, Douglas Frank explains in his book why his title.
The more moderate of them were sometimes willing to join civic campaigns for moral reform, risking the ire of compatriots who thought any effort to cleanse society by social or political action could only delay the second coming.
See, I told you I didn't make this stuff
You didn't make it up, nope.
All right, turn to the next page, 140, where I got marked for you. With the post-it, there. And if you'll, just that short little part.
Many were building businesses or being educated for the professions and not evangelizing. Their eschatology implied something much different from the way they spent their time and conceived of their lives. Serious Christians were being torn in two directions, and it undoubtedly added to an unconscious reservoir of guilt.
Nevertheless, Stephen, some dispensationalists like Tim and Beverly LaHaye have done an awful lot in their lives for helping people, more than most Christians have, in attempting to restrain ungodliness in America. But the reality is they were operating in a schizophrenic manner. According to their eschatological worldview, they should have allowed ungodliness to progress, unhampered, unimpeded, thereby hastening the return of Christ. Again, according to their eschatological view. To do otherwise would just be delaying it. This is the conundrum of schizophrenia that has existed since fundamentalism and its eschatological view of premillennial or dispensational premillennialism became popular in the mid-20th century. But psychologically and behaviorally, it has undermined the social initiative of millions, if not billions, of Christians ever since. And yes, we have been tamed. But there's more.
It gets worse or better?
Because we're not done. We have another two alterations to yet address.
Okay.
But we'll have to do that in our next video.
Okay. So, that gives you a taste for what's coming up. Thank you, John, for that. So we've talked about the kingdom Christianity. Has Christianity been tamed? And we've been through 2 videos so far. We've got one more coming up. We hope that you'll stay tuned for that. I couldn't help but think when you were talking, John, about how it seems so ludicrous to hear God's basically telling us to do something specific in His will to advance the kingdom. And we have people that really love the Lord that want to do His will, but they're afraid that if they do what He says, which is to advance the kingdom, well, then that's going to put off this rapture they're waiting for. And so they're actually fighting against God. They love the Lord, but they're fighting against God because they don't want to put off what they're, in their mind, they think they're waiting for. So if you get first things wrong, you get last things wrong. So that's why it's so important for us to understand the basics of the Bible and then work our way up into the deeper things like this. So thank you for taking us through that. We're looking forward to seeing you on the next one coming up. And it'll be the same title again, Kingdom Christianity, Has Christianity Been Tamed? And that's going to be part 3. It'll be video number 49. So we're looking forward to seeing you then. Take care. Good night.
All right.